Is he a nutcase? No, he's a rock biter. A rock biter. A rock biter!
Joey here at School of Motion, and welcome to day 16 of 30 Days of After Effects. This video is part one of a 3-lesson series, and I'm pretty excited about it. I'm gonna walk you through nearly every single step that it takes to create the kinetic type piece that played at the beginning of this video. I wanted to do that because I thought it might be interesting to walk you through an entire project step by step, because there are so many things that have to come together when you're syncing audio and you're trying to get type to pop up at the right time and you're thinking of how to animate, and then you've got tons of layers and camera moves. There's just a lot of stuff. So I want to show you how I deal with the complexities of a normal motion graphics job. Kinetic type jobs have been around for a long time and they're probably not going away anytime soon. Now before we get started, don't forget to sign up for a free student account so you can grab the project files from this piece as well as assets from any other lesson on the site. All right, let's hop into After Effects and let's get going on the first part of our kinetic type video.
So first of all, if you guys don't know what movie this quote is from, then I feel old. But anyway, what I want to try to do with this video is a little bit of an experiment to see how this is going to work. And when this is all over, if we're all still alive, I'd like to maybe get some feedback from you guys. Let me know if doing tutorials this way works for you, if you learned something from it. And what I want to try to do is literally over the course of, I'm guessing, 2 to 3 videos, I want to try to recreate this entire thing for you. And I might fast forward through some parts and gloss over some things, but I want to walk you step by step through it. Because doing a video like this, especially when you're starting out as an After Effects artist, it can seem kind of daunting because there's just so many things happening. There's all these animated pieces. There's a ton of camera movement. There's effects, and how do you manage that and sync it all up to audio and get it to feel the way you want and all that stuff? Really, there's not a trick to it. It just takes a lot of work. But I want to sort of try and let you into my head a little bit, so you can kind of see how I go about setting stuff like this up. So I'm gonna come back to this a lot and reference it, but here we go. Let's dive in. Let's start doing this. So the first thing I want to show you is sort of the pieces of this that we have. So all of the pieces of this animation, the sort of big graphic pieces, they're just black and white Illustrator art. And I just did this real quick, just so we had something to work with. I won't go too far into like the Illustrator part of this, but just know that doing your artwork in Illustrator, it's always a good idea, even if you end up like bringing it into Photoshop and tweaking it more there. If you create it in Illustrator, you always have the option of making, I've got these tiny little footprints, but then if I want to, I can turn on the continuous rasterize button and I can just make them enormous and they don't pixelate. So that's something that almost every little video like this, the artwork is done in Illustrator first. And also I want to take you guys back in time, because I'm sure a lot of you have seen this before, but this type of video is called a kinetic type video. It's one of those things that just you'll have to do at some point, and you can thank MK12 for that. So this video came out in 2002, which is very hard to believe that it really was that long ago. But as far as anyone can tell, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but this is always cited as the first kinetic type video. So I just want to show you guys a little bit of it if you've never seen it.
Well, machismo is part of the culture in Brazil. It's not just a male behavior. It's actually a whole.
So it's kind of funny to watch now because it's got a standard definition frame, and the animation's good, but it doesn't have that slick, glossy feel that a lot of things have now. But this thing is 12 years old, and it holds up surprisingly well, which is a testament to how good MK12 was and how way ahead of their time they were. But there's a lot of things in this video that are just, like standard kinetic type sort of, cliches now. The camera rotates, and the main gag is that the words are synced up to the voice, right? And there's little icons and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, so if you haven't seen this before, you should probably watch it because, motion design is a very new field, but we're actually at the point where there is some history to it a little bit. And it's kind of interesting to go back and look at the things that, that sort of came before. And I don't know, it can help you, especially if you end up working for a motion design studio, and there's, people in their 30s and 40s working there. They're going to remember these things, and it helps to have a common history to talk about. All right, so here's our artwork, and then on top of that, we have the audio clip that you heard playing, and that's the quote from The Never-Ending Story, which I don't know, it makes me feel like a 5-year-old every time I hear that quote. So first thing I want to do, whenever I have a kinetic type thing like this, the first thing I do is I'll bring the audio clip into a new comp. All right, and let's bring this down here, and let's just call this audio setup for now. All right, and here's what I want to do. I want to play the audio, and I want to basically mark out where the sounds are and where the words are that I want to animate to. All right, and so on your keyboard, if you have a full-size keyboard and you have that number pad on the right side of the keyboard, there's a period right next to the 0 on there. And if you hit that, After Effects will instantly play your audio without rendering the video. So this is a great way to preview audio. Another trick is if you select your audio layer and you hit L twice, it brings up the waveform. And so then, the waveform, if you guys are unfamiliar, this is sort of a visual representation of your audio file. So I can kind of see where words are being spoken. And you obviously can't see, as it gets louder and louder and things just sort of pick up here, you can't really tell what's going on, but it gives you a good kind of starting point. So first I just want to listen to the whole thing.
Is he? Nutcase? No, he's a rock biter. A rock biter. A rock biter!
All right, and so when I heard this and I thought, okay, I'm going to animate to it, I tried to pick out some little details that I thought I might be able to pick up in the animation. And so the first thing I heard was the footsteps. And I thought that would be kind of cool as a way to get into the animation, like you're following these footsteps and then, they kind of stop and then the conversation starts, okay? So there's some footsteps here I knew I wanted to animate to, and I want to, I want to have a visual reference of where those footsteps happen. So let me zoom in on my timeline here. I'm using the plus and minus key on the top row of where the numbers are on your keyboard. The plus and minus keys zoom in and out of your timeline. And when you have the waveform open, you can actually zoom in and out of the waveform, which is cool. But what I want to do is zoom in, and then I want to put a marker where each of the footprints are, and you can kind of see them here, right? If I preview this, you can kind of see there's one there, and there, okay? Now, just to be sure, another audio trick you can do, you can hold Command, and then if you click and drag this, you can kind of scrub. This is called scrubbing the audio. So I can sort of grab the playhead and pull it forward, and right there, I hear a footstep. So I want to put a marker here, and I don't want to put the marker on the audio layer. Okay, you could do that. By the way, the hotkey for that is the asterisk key on your number pad. At least that's what I use. I use the asterisk key on your number pad. And so you just select the layer, you hit it, and it adds a marker. But I don't want it on the layer, I want it on the comp. So I'm going to make sure I don't have anything selected and hit asterisk. Okay? And now I have a marker here. And the great thing about that is if I accidentally move this out of sync, or if I pre-comp something, I'm still going to have markers here. All right, so then I'll go to the next one, add a marker, right? Right there, yep. Add another one, add another one, add another one, okay? And then, it's always a good idea to stay organized, especially, if you were setting this up and then 2 other people were going to help you work on it, they may not know what these markers are. So what you can do is double click the marker and type in footstep start, right? And now you get a little note, and then you can say, like last footstep or something. Cool. All right, and so now, if you zoom out, it's going to start to get, a little crowded up here, but that's okay because you're probably when you're laying out the footsteps and syncing them up, you're going to be in close like this. Cool. So now we have markers for those. All right, so now let's do the speaking. Okay. Now, I'll show you one more cool little audio trick too. It's not really something that, like for this, I would probably just manually step through and put a marker up here. But this is a cool trick if you're doing something that, goes to music, or if there's just a ton of dialogue and you kind of want to rough out where the words are before you actually go in and sync things up exactly. What you can do is you can hit that period button on your keyboard, the one that's on the number pad. And while it's playing, you can hit the asterisk key to set a marker in real time as the audio is playing. I'll show you what I mean.
No, he's a rock biter.
Right, and you can see as I tap that asterisk key, as the audio is playing, it's adding markers for me. So that's pretty cool. But it's much harder to do that with dialogue because it's like hard to remember the timing of it. So I'm just gonna step through this and do this real quick. So is he, and I want to be very specific and have a marker for each word. So is, he starts to say is here. So I add a marker, I double click it, I to say is. He is right there. Okay. And this is just a tedious process. Right there's that little tss, because he's laughing. He thinks it's funny. All right, so I'm going to go through and I am going to set this up, and I won't make you guys watch. And when we come back, all of this will be set up. So now I have marked out every single word and sound effect that I want to animate to in here, and you can see that everything's synced up nice.
Is he? No, he's a rock biter. A rock biter.
All right, and I tried to really catch every little word. No, he's a rock biter, and this will just make it easier to animate. So now that we've got that set up, let's start actually building the comp. So, if we go back and we look at this, what's going on is there's a world with a camera moving around the world and layers carefully placed so the camera kind of sees them, right? And makes a nice composition. And there's a lot of different ways to do that in After Effects. When what I'd considered doing was making a giant pre-comp and sort of animating all of this stuff inside of that pre-comp, and then just moving a camera around, kind of in a different comp. And that's, you can totally do it that way. I sometimes don't though. And in this case, I didn't. I actually just moved the camera around and placed things, and just did it all inside of the comp that had everything in it. And the reason I did that was because I like to be very, very specific with like compositions, right? So I knew I wanted to zoom in and see this, like we're leaning in, and then zoom way out when he goes a nutcase, right? And I wanted I wanted this type of composition, but then I wanted to do this rotation and zoom in and see this line. And the problem is, if you're trying to place all these things in a giant pre-comp, it's kind of hard to tell how that's going to look when you eventually put a camera over it. And so sometimes it's easier to just kind of do both, animate the camera and start placing things in the same comp. And it can get really, really messy. I mean, I can show you here if we dive into this actual thing, and then we come. Let's see here. See, it starts to get a little bit messy. So here's actually the timeline of my animation, and I'll talk about what all this stuff is. But you know, there's a bunch of layers, a bunch of pre-comps, and this actually isn't too bad. I mean, I've had comps with hundreds and hundreds of layers in it, so this is actually fine. But you know, sometimes I just like to keep everything in the same comp and animate it all, and it makes it a little bit easier to make specific framings. So all right, so there you go. So now we are actually going to start making picture. So the first thing that I did was, you know, I picked my colors, and just to make sure that I kind of use the same colors, I'm just going to come in here and actually grab my background right out of this. Okay, so these are just two. I'm going to copy them and then I'll explain them. So all these layers I have my base color, and then I kind of have a highlight color in the middle. And there you go. That's it. That's my background, okay? Now I want to make a point. I want to make a point to you guys. So let me come back here and let this RAM preview again. So one of the things that you know, that you sort of learn once you start moving a camera around in After Effects is that in order for your viewer, whoever's watching your piece, to realize, hey, a camera's moving around, in order for that to work, there has to be some kind of reference, right? And what I mean is, look at the texture on the ground.
No, he's a rock
Okay?
biter.
If that wasn't there, it wouldn't feel as grounded, right? You wouldn't have this visual reference at all times to tell you, hey, the camera's zooming in, the camera's zooming out, the camera's moving. Obviously, you have words and things that pop up, you know, that would give you some of that reference, but here's what I mean, right? Let me make a new comp real quick, and I won't even name it. If I put, you know, if I type in, you know, rock biter, right, like this, okay, and I make that a 3D layer, and I add a camera, okay, and I won't. Let's not get into this yet, but I just want to show you if I have a camera and I move the camera left and right, okay? Without any reference, right? There's just this black background. I don't know if the camera's moving or if the word's moving, okay? As a viewer, I don't know that. You know, and so then, you know, it just gets confusing. And if you had a ton of these on screen, you know, like if you had like one here and one here and one here, you know, it might be a little bit better for your viewer, you know, maybe, but it's still impossible to tell, right? And what helps in this situation is some kind of texture, just a subtle thing. And so I have a couple of textures I got here. I got this off of cgtextures.com, which I'll link to, which is an incredible free resource for textures. And if I'll just stick this in here, turn the opacity way down for a minute and make it a 3D layer. Okay, and just by having a little bit of a texture to it, right now we can tell that the camera's moving, okay? So I knew I was gonna need a texture, and this is actually the texture I used. All right, so let me just cut that, and now we can delete this comp. All right, so you a lot of times when you do a kinetic type piece, and let's go back and look at that Brazil one again. Now, they didn't do that, but what they did have was at all times something's on screen to give you a reference that, look, the camera's moving. I mean, their design was super duper busy, and so there was never really a point where you're confused. Am I moving, or are the words moving, right? So let me paste that texture in there, and let me scale this down too, because, you know, one of the things I really don't like is when I can see like a ton of detail in a texture that's just supposed to be a background thing. I mean, I really want it to be like, you know, I want it to be like this size. Now, this texture, Let me crank it up for a minute. This texture I actually prepared ahead of time in Photoshop. It didn't look like this when I downloaded it. And what I did was I made it into a seamless texture that you can tile, right? So if I duplicate this layer and I move this copy here, right? There shouldn't be any seam if I line it up perfectly, which I didn't really do, but yeah, so you can see there's no seam. And then, that also works on the top and the bottom and the left and everything. So this is a seamless texture, which is pretty handy because I knew the camera was going to be zooming in and out, and I didn't really know where this texture was going to have to be at all times. So I needed to make it sort of flexible. And I don't want to jump into Photoshop in this tutorial, but if you guys don't know how to make a seamless texture, it's very easy to do actually. And if I'm sure if you Google it, you'll find it, but I'm happy to do a video about it if you guys would like to know that. So let me add the camera here, right? And we can kind of feel what this is looking like. So really quickly, the camera that I use for kinetic type pieces is always a 1-node camera. And there's really only 2 options in this type box, 1-node and 2-node. A 2-node camera has a focal point to it. So let me just quickly make a 2-node camera. And if I look at, let me open up the position settings here. Let's see here. So the 2-node camera has a point of interest, okay? And it always looks at that point of interest. So if I move the point of interest, the camera turns to rotate and look at it. And if I move the position, but I don't move the point of interest, the camera does this weird kind of angling thing, right? Like it's always looking at the point of interest. This might actually make a little more sense if I go into a custom view and zoom out. So you can see that this point here, that's the point of interest, and here's the camera. And if I move the camera without moving the point of interest, it always looks at it. Sometimes that's useful, but when I want a camera that's going to be moving around really quickly and doing tons and tons of camera moves and looking at different places all the time, a 2-node camera is much harder to control. So I'm going to use a 1-node camera, and the 1-node camera does not use the point of interest, okay? So if I move this camera left and right, it just moves left and right, and it doesn't rotate. And so if I zoom in and out and move left and right, obviously we're seeing the seam. We're seeing the edge of this texture, which is no good. And so there's a bunch of different ways to deal with this. And what I did in this case, this doesn't always work, and I'll talk a little bit about why, but I used an effect called CC Reptile. This comes with After Effects. And all it does is it lets you easily repeat your layer. Okay. So this, expand right property, if I crank that up, right, it just literally copies the texture off to the right, and it does it perfectly. And since I made this a seamless texture in Photoshop, it is now going to be a seamless tile in After Effects. And there's different ways to tile. Repeat is what I want. I just want it to copy and make another one. But you can switch this. In some cases, it works better if it's unfold, which that basically mirrors the layer. So the texture goes this way, and then it sort of happens again backwards. It's like a Rorschach test. All right, but I'll set it to repeat, and I'm going to expand it to the left. I'm going to expand it up and down. And you can crank these settings really, really high, and it will start to bog down After Effects. So you got to be careful. And this is one of the problems I ran into when I was animating this. And this is kind of the only big issue with using CC Reptile is if you have a massive, massive comp and you need to set this up to like 15, 20,000, eventually After Effects is not going to like this layer anymore. It's going to start chugging. So what I actually ended up doing was I sort of, move my camera around, animate it, and then I would duplicate this layer, right? And sort of hand line up just where I needed it, right? So I would sort of build this patchwork of textures that were only really existing where the camera was looking. So I didn't have to have some massive, massive numbers up here. All right, so you set up the CC Reptile. This is not what I want the texture to look like. If you come look at the final render here, you can see that you basically just get little white specks, right? You're just seeing, just a little bit of detail in this comp here. So the way I did that was I did some color correction. So I first inverted this, right? And so now all of the details turn white and the rest of it turns black. And then you can just use a transfer mode. So you can use add or screen, okay? And then I'm going to use a levels effect. And what screen is doing is it's basically knocking out the dark pixels and it's only showing me the lighter pixels. And so if I use the levels effect here, and you can see that where we're seeing this big spike in the histogram, that is all of these very dark pixels. But there's what this is telling me is that those pixels are not black. So that's why we're seeing all this muddiness, right? But if I move this input arrow to the right, it makes them black. And if I just push, there we go. So now I've stripped out everything except, just the harshest details of this texture. Cool? And then you can just play with the opacity, right? And I don't remember exactly what I had it, but I mean, that's all you need. You don't need a big honk in texture. All you need is a little bit so that when you zoom in and out, your eye has something to look at. And I kind of like not seeing very much of it, because one danger that you can easily have with something like this is that you'll start to see a pattern to the texture, and your eye's very good at picking up patterns, and then that'll give it away that you've kind of just used a little texture and copied it a bunch of times. All right, so now we've got this kind of a setup, and now we're actually ready to start animating stuff. So the first thing that needs to animate are the footsteps. Okay, so let's go take a look at the footsteps. Okay, and these are really simple kind of doodles I did. So let me copy those. I'm just gonna grab them. I'm gonna copy them. Let's come back to our audio setup. Now, the way I was thinking about this was I want to just animate one footstep and then be able to just copy it and sort of put it where I want it and put in adjust the timing of it. And so the easiest way to do that would be to make a new comp, animate a footstep in that comp, and then I can just sort of hand place them, okay? So let's do that. Let's make a new comp. Let me close this up. I'm gonna try to keep this organized as we go. So I'm gonna make a new folder in my comps folder. This little underscore PC stands for pre-comp, and that's how I just sort of keep my After Effects projects clean, is I throw all the pre-comps in there. So why don't we make a PC demo folder? All right, and so now with that highlighted, if I make a new pre-comp, and let's call this footstep single, right? It sticks the pre-comp in there for me. So that's a cool little trick. All right, so I'm gonna paste the footsteps in there. And you can't see them because they're black, so let me hit Command K. It brings up your composition settings, and just change the background color to something where I'll be able to see these. And I don't need to animate both of them. I can just animate one because they're mirror images of each other. They're no different. So let me delete that one, and I'll grab this one and I'll scale it up. And because I don't know exactly how close I'm going to be to the footprint, and I don't know, I don't really know how big I need this to be. I'm just going to make it bigger than it probably is ever going to be on screen, and that way I can always scale it down and still have all that nice detail, right? If I animated it at this size, and then in the next comp we were zoomed in this close, it would look really pixelated, okay? So here's my footstep. Let's make it about this big. And what I wanted to do was actually make it feel like the foot was landing, right? And if you think about the way a foot lands, you sort of land when you're walking, especially if you're barefoot, you land on the forefoot, and your toes kind of come down, and then at the same time the toes are coming down, the outer part of your foot kind of rolls around, and then your heel hits last, okay? And so I kind of wanted to mimic that, and I wanted to do it quickly, so I just did it with a mask. So let me select the layer, and I'm going to grab the ellipse tool, and actually let let me duplicate this. And the reason I'm duplicating it, let me show you what happens if I don't duplicate it. I want to draw a mask around a bunch of different pieces of this foot. So if I draw a mask around it, that's great. Now I want to draw a mask around the big toe. Well, I can't see the big toe anymore. So it's easier if I just have a copy sitting underneath it and maybe turn the opacity down a little bit, and then I'll lock that copy, and that can just be kind of my reference. So now on this copy, I'm gonna use the ellipse tool, okay? And that's kind of the first part of the foot that's gonna, oh boy, here we go. That's the first part of the foot that's gonna appear. So let me adjust that. All right, and now I want a mask around each toe, okay? So I'm gonna hit Q. Q is the hotkey for the mask tool. Make sure it's in ellipse mode. And what I want to do is just draw a mask around each toe and adjust it, and make sure that the mask is pretty precise, like it's not accidentally overlapping this toe or something like that. Okay, and I could easily now just duplicate this mask, right? Move it over, double click it so I can transform it. And just line that up. Okay, duplicate it, move it over, double click it. All right, and we'll do it again. And then one more time. There we go. Okay, and now I need the heel. So I'll hit Q. And now I need the midfoot. All right, so I'll just draw another ellipse like this. Now, why did I just draw a whole bunch of masks? When you have a bunch of masks like this, you can actually animate them on and off. And there's some cool mask settings. For example, if I open up this mask expansion is what I'm going to be animating. And you can see if I just animate it, it's sort of, it eats the mask away, and then I can reveal it. And I can do that in sequence for each piece of this foot. And if you wanted to, you could even add more pieces. I just did this in very broad strokes because it's going to happen very quickly. And now I can delete this little reference footprint back there. So let me hit M and open up all these masks. And actually, what I want to see is the mask expansion for all of these. And by default, when you hit M, it only brings up the mask path property. So if you double tap M, it brings up all the mask properties. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my my tilde key. If you guys don't remember, tilde is it's to the left of the 1 on the top row of your keyboard. It's a little squiggle, and when you hit it, whatever window your mouse is over will temporarily take up the whole screen. And so I use it all the time when I want to turn on the stopwatch for a bunch of properties, but I can't see them because the screen isn't big enough. So if I temporarily do that, I'm going to hit mask expansion on each of these. Okay. And now I can just hit U, and now I can just see those keyframes. And I want this to happen pretty quickly. Let's say maybe 4 frames. So I'm going to go forward 4 frames, and I'm just using page down to do that. And I'm going to move those keyframes to that point in time, and then I'm going to go back to the beginning, and one by one, I'm going to change the mask expansion until that piece of the foot goes away. Okay, so I'm erasing the foot using the mask expansion. There we go. Okay, and I want this to have a little bit of a sequence to it. So, like I said, I want the forefoot, right, the sort of top meaty part of the foot, to animate on first, right? So that's this mask. All right, so that's going to happen first. So, right, that'll start to happen. As that happens, the pinky toe is going to land first. And then each toe is going to land a split second later, going from right to left. So let's figure out which mask is which. So mask 6 is the pinky toe. I can tell because when I selected it, it's sort of the points got a little bit thicker, right? So that's first. So I'm going to grab those keyframes and just nudge it forward a couple frames. Then I'm just going to go to the next toe and move it 1 frame further than the pinky toe. And I'm just going to do that for all of the toes real quick. And this might seem like a cheap animation trick, but and I assure you it is. When excuse me, when when you're animating something like this, and a lot of times you're trying to go really fast, I a lot of times look for ways to animate that don't take a ton of manual labor. And I mean, a lot of that is because I'm a freelancer. I don't generally work with a huge team. If you did, you could have one person spend all day on this footprint and make it look amazing and do some really cool stuff. But in general, that's not the situation I'm in. All right, so you see how this mask here, I may have expanded it too much, and it's sort of showing the toes off before I want them to appear. So I need to go back and adjust that a little bit. There we go. Okay, cool. So now the toes land, and as the toes are landing, I want the heel and this midfoot to land. Okay, and that's these masks down here. So I'm just gonna scoot these forward and maybe have the midfoot be the last part. Okay, cool. And I'll just easy ease these just so it's not such a linear looking thing. It won't really make a huge difference, but let's RAM preview that. Okay, so there's our foot landing. Okay, pretty simple. And it's got this hard edge to it, right? Which is fine. And so now looking at this, I'm thinking, and I'm doing this in a specific order because I want to show you guys what happens if you sort of change your mind. So I did this, and then I realized, hey, you know what? It would be really cool if, instead of having these super, just hard linear edges, I could actually give this a little bit more of an organic edge. Organic. And so what would be helpful is if I could actually adjust the contour of those masks, and it's not going to be very easy to do the way I've set this up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a new layer, right? Command Y, and I'll just call this matte. And it's actually the same color as my background, so I can't see it. Let me just make it a different color. Okay, there we go. Cool. And I'm going to temporarily make it an adjustment layer. And then I'm going to copy all of these masks. I'm just going to grab all of them and copy them and paste them onto this layer. All right, let's zoom out and see where do those masks end up. They're super duper small, way up here in the corner because I masked these things out on an illustrator layer. And so you can see that, I basically get useless mask information here. And so I sort of ran into this problem. And so what I ended up doing was, and this is just sort of, necessity breeds invention. So here's my foot, and I'm just going to duplicate it. And I'm going to have the bottom copy. I'm going to turn all these masks off. I'm just going to delete them all. I don't need them. And I'm going to have this bottom copy use the top copy as an alpha matte. Okay, so this is going to be my foot, and then this is going to be the matte, right? And by doing that, wonderful. Now I can actually manipulate the matte and mess with those edges. And I just used an effect called roughen edges, and it's sort of like a turbulent displace for edges. Right, you can see it just kind of messes up the edges a little bit, and you can mess with the settings if you want it to be more or less kind of, eaten away like that, right? And then the only problem is that if you roughen the edges too much, then you actually don't get your whole image back at the end. So I may have to keyframe, something, or what you can do is with this matte object selected, I could use an effect like a simple choker, and I could actually just expand that output a little bit like this, right? So by going negative with the choke matte, it's expand. Here, let me turn this layer on so you can see what it's doing, right? I'm actually expanding that matte out like this, and I probably want to do that before the roughen edges, right? There we go. And now let's use that as an alpha matte. Turn that back on, and you can see that this is still probably the borders set too high. There we go. Let's take a look at that. Cool. Okay. I mean, it's not the most amazing thing in the world, but you know, it's more interesting than just like cutting the foot on. You know, and I don't know, I might play with these and just kind of see what other little, you know, what other kind of little effects you can get just by messing with the settings. Right? That's kind of cool looking. And then, you know, just so it's not, the problem is that it happens so fast that, you know, what my eye really notices this gap kind of in between the forefoot and the heel, and it's just a little bit too harsh. So what I'm gonna do is grab both these layers, pre-comp them, and say footstep pre-comp, and I'm gonna duplicate it. I'm gonna offset one copy. Let's try 2 frames. And then the bottom copy, I'm just gonna set to 50%. Okay, and so now you get sort of this ghosted, you know, sort of version of the footstep that happens just a few frames before. And I think it might even be cooler if I duplicated that again and had another one. So I basically have a 50% transparent footstep here, and then 1 frame later, another 50%, and then 1 frame later, 100%. Right? And it's just going to sort of very quickly build that footstep on. That's actually what I did for the test. But now looking at this, it might, you know, I'm always curious, like what would happen if I, you know, then just like blurred one of these a little bit, maybe only blur it vertically, right? What if I blurred the middle one, right? And then, but I need to get rid of it and take the blur away by the time this thing finishes. Otherwise, you're going to notice it. That's kind of interesting, right? I don't know. I don't like it. I'm going to get rid of it. So, okay, so there's our footstep. Cool. And again, keep in mind that it's going to be, you know, most of the time it's going to be very small on screen. But there's your footstep. And then I thought to myself, well, it's a footstep and it looks super vectory. So why not throw a little texture on it, right? And give it a little grit. And so to do that, I used one of these texture images. I think I used this one, this dry earth texture from CG Textures. And what you can do, if you're going to make a pre-comp and then just use the pre-comp somewhere else, you can put a texture on the very top of the comp like this and set the mode to silhouette luma, right? And that will sort of knock out pieces of that, of whatever's underneath it. Okay, and so what I can then do is I can put levels on that texture. I can put a color correction levels effect on the texture, and I can just push it, and the further black I push it, the more foot you see, right? And then the more white that I sort of crank into it, the less foot you see. And so what I can do is sort of eat away some of that foot, and I can play with the scale of that texture too. You know, something in there. And that's kind of cool because you see how there's like a pebble in here and it's sort of eating away a little chunk of the foot. It's kind of cool. I like to play with stuff like that. It's always kind of nice when you can get the edge not to be so perfect. And then I'm going to push, here we go, this output white arrow. This sort of is the maximum brightness that this texture will be allowed to be. And if I make that lower, I can still see the texture, but it's just bringing back some of the opacity of the foot, right? So let me turn on the transparency grid so you can really see what it's doing, right? I'm just bringing back a little bit of the foot by pushing this arrow. Cool, so now that foot has got some texture to it, and it's actually transparent, which is cool because if I put it on top of my nice purple color here, I'll be able to see that purple through it. All right, so here's my single footstep. And that's in my PC demo folder there. So got a single footstep, and what I want to do is now line up, you know, a bunch of those footsteps and have them in sync with the audio. Okay. So what I could do is I could just take my footstep single and place it here, and then line it up to that nice marker, right? I could do that. And you can see I have to change the color of the footstep, but you can still see through it a little bit, right? It's kind of nice. And I might adjust that a little bit so you can see through it a little bit more. Yeah, it's a little bit better. So, but what I thought would be cool is if they kind of animated in an arc. When you're animating stuff, a lot of times, things moving in a straight line doesn't look right. It helps if they're moving in an arc. It's one of the animation principles. And so I figured that would be easier to do if I pre-comped all of the footsteps together. So I've put one footstep in this comp. So why don't I just pre-comp that one footstep, and we'll call this footsteps arc. And there it is. And I'm going to stick it up here in PC demo, and let's dive in. And here's the problem. The problem is here I don't actually have any audio to sync this up to. And so this is a trick I do constantly when I'm doing kinetic type stuff, is I will grab this audio clip here, and first thing I want to do is just transfer just the footstep markers onto it. So I'm going to hold shift, and when you hold shift and you move your playhead, it sort of snaps to your markers. So I'll snap here, and I'll make sure this is selected and hit my asterisk, snap to the next one, and I'm just going to quickly transfer the footsteps on there. And then I'm going to copy the audio clip, jump in here and paste it. Now, one thing you got to be careful of is when you copy and paste an audio clip and it's in a pre-comp, and that pre-comp is being used in a comp that has audio in it also. What's going to happen is you can see how there's two speaker icons now. In my footsteps arc pre-comp, I have audio. I've copied this. So it's actually going to play this audio clip twice, which is going to make it twice as loud. So there's two solutions. One is you just make sure you turn that off, right? But I always forget to. So what I do is if I copy and paste an audio clip, I control click it and I set it to be a guide layer, okay? And if you've never used guide layers, they're super useful. A guide layer has this little icon next to it, and what it means is in this comp, when I'm working on this comp, this layer exists, right? I can hear the audio. If you can put it on a layer you're looking at too, and while you're working on it, it will show up. But once you use that pre-comp, that audio doesn't exist anymore, okay? So even though you see the speaker icon, no audio will play on this layer because I've made the audio a guide layer. All right, and now I've got my markers for the footsteps. So let's grab a single footstep, place it in here, change the background to something. That was Command K, by the way. I accidentally dragged two in there. All right, so here I'll show. Here's another cool example of how to use a guide layer. So I want to line up. You're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 footsteps, and I want them to kind of arc. Okay, and I could just sort of eyeball that, but why eyeball it? Why not give myself a reference? So I'm gonna grab my pen tool, and I'm just gonna kind of draw the path that I want these things. I'm in Roto Bezier mode, which is fine. We can use that. And maybe just kind of give myself a little bit of a reference path. So I made a shape layer, and I don't want to fill. So I'm going to click on the word fill up here and turn off the fill. All right. And I'm just using this as a reference, so it doesn't have to be perfect. But that's going to be the path that I want those footsteps to follow. Okay. And I obviously don't want to see that, right? When we come back here, I don't want to see that line. So I'll just turn it into a guide layer. Okay, so I can see it here, but when we go back, now it's gone, right? And that's the beauty of the guide layer. And so now what I'll do is let me scale this down a little bit. Oh, and here's something good to think about. So at this point, I'm already starting to think about how I might want the camera to follow this movement, and I'm thinking, I probably want to start zoomed in, and then the footsteps begin and I sort of pull back and follow them. Okay, so how close am I going to be to the footsteps when this comp starts? And I didn't know, right? And I might be this close. And if I'm this close, but in this comp I'm animating them very small like this, well then I'm going to lose detail. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make my comp twice normal size, okay? So you could just hit Command K and adjust your width and height and do that. But the problem is I've already kind of set down this shape layer as my guide. And what if I want to keep it where it is? Well, After Effects has some built-in scripts. If you go to the File Scripts menu, and one of them is Scale Composition. And if you select that, you get this cool little box, and you can just say, New Scale Factor 2, and it just doubles the height and width of your comp. Let me go back in here, right? So now if I hit Command K, you can see it's double HD, but as it scales it keeps everything in exactly the same spot. So it's just a cool shortcut to scale your comp up. And so now I can scale my footstep down, right? And animate a bunch of footsteps here. But this footstep is actually pretty big. It's, because the comp is so big. All right, so let's rotate this one. And let's start lining these up with the audio. Okay, so there's one footstep. And then I'll duplicate it. And I'll move this layer so it lines up with the marker. And I'm going to scale it. I'm just going to add a negative sign on the X scale. All right, so it just flips it. And then I'm going to hit W. W brings up your rotate tool. I'm just going to click and rotate it. Okay, and then I'm going to Command D, duplicate it. Sorry, no, I'm not. I'm going to click this one. When I'm moving really fast, and I'm just trying to click and duplicate and rotate, I want to make sure that I don't accidentally do what I just did and select that shape layer. So I'm going to lock it. So now I can click this, duplicate, move it here, hit W, rotate it a little bit, right? Grab this one, duplicate it, move it here, rotate it a little bit. Okay, and make sure that I'm lining these up too. So this is the third footstep. This is the fourth footstep. And then this last one here is going to be this one. So we'll put it over here. Rotate it a little bit. All right, and then what I wanted to do was once that last foot lands, I then want sort of the other foot to sort of stand next to it. Okay, so then, a few frames later, we'll have 2 feet standing next to each other like that. Okay, and let's turn off that shape layer for a minute so we can see. And you can see that now we've got this nice kind of arc, and I might even want to cheat this a little bit more. All right, and really give it some curve. All right, so let's play this real quick with the audio. Cool, so it's in sync, but I've actually synced up the beginning of the animation with each footfall sound. So this might visually look more in sync if I take all of these and I just nudge them back 2 or 3 frames. So I'm gonna hold Option and hit Page Up and just nudge them all. Here we go, we'll RAM preview that. That's better. Cool, so that's looking okay, but I feel like the animation of the footsteps takes too long, and I kind of want them to disappear once they, so I want that first one to land, and by the time this one's starting, I want this one to be fading off. So I'm just gonna now go back into my pre-comp here, and let's go back into this pre-comp, and let's do this. Let's select the mat and hit U, bring up all the keyframes, and let me hit the tilde key, and I'm just gonna select all of these, and I'm gonna look for the last keyframe, which looks like this one is the one that's furthest to the right, and I'm gonna hold Option and click and just nudge these in. So the footsteps happen about twice as fast now. Okay, and then I want them to animate off, right? So let's go back to our footsteps arc. So they animate on, and then here, this one starts to fade off. So if I want that one to fade off, maybe what I'll do is let's think, what would be a neat way to do this? What we could do is, got an idea. I'm gonna use an adjustment layer here. We'll call this fade off. And make it an adjustment layer. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually use an effect to get rid of this foot. So it doesn't just fade out, it'll do something slightly neater than that. We'll go up to Effect, and in Transition, there's this effect called Gradient Wipe, which sounds kind of lame, but what it actually does is the Gradient Wipe takes another layer's brightness values, and it can then basically fade off the darker or lighter parts first, right? So it looks a little neater. So if I set the gradient layer to this cool dry earth texture, fade off dry earth, then when I animate this, you see how it sort of animates in this kind of neater way. And you can play with the softness so it's not a total hard edge like that. It can be a little bit soft. A little bit more maybe. Yeah, something like that. And so now it'll sort of dissolve off and it'll look a little bit cooler, right? And you can play with inverting the gradient and see if that looks any better. I actually do like the way that looks better because you get a little bit of that foot kind of left at the end. So right there, that's where the fade off's going to begin. So I'm going to put a keyframe on transition completeness. Make sure it's at 0. And then let's just jump forward 8 frames and we'll animate this. And it looks like I only need to animate it to about there. 100%. How about that? Who would have guessed? Sometimes it depends on the image. If it doesn't have any true black in it or true white, sometimes you don't have to go all the way to 100%. In this case, we do. So 100%. And then I'm just going to easy ease the keyframes. And I'm going to go into the curves editor and I'm going to take this last keyframe and pull the Bezier handle out like this. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want it to sort of start fading out, but then like linger. And it's happening so quickly you can't even see it. So let me pull that out a little bit further. There you go. And I just want like the last bits of that foot to just take a little bit longer. And let's see what happens if I pull this Bezier handle out too. Cool. All right, so that's, you know, it's a little bit neater than just fading the thing off. And now if we go to footsteps arc and we play this. Cool. And now these last 2 footsteps, you know, if I didn't want them to fade off, I could just put a time remap keyframe on them so they don't fade off, but the rest of them do. So there we go. There's our footsteps. Cool. And now we can actually use the footsteps arc pre-comp in our main comp here, right? And it's already in there. And you can see how big it is. So let's kind of line this up here where it's going to start. All right, and let's pick a different color for it. I actually used the Adobe color tab over here to pick out some colors for this. And so I'm just gonna sort of cheat and just pull the colors right off of this. Here's a trick I like to use. I want to grab this purple color. But this layer is actually buried a few pre-comps deep, and I don't really feel like going in and trying to find it. So what I'm going to do is I have my character tab open. This is, you know, your text settings, and there's a color picker that just hangs out there. And sometimes I'll use it just as like a storage, you know, just a way of remembering a color. And so now what I'm going to do is put a fill effect on those footsteps, and now I can use this color picker to pick this colorway over here. So now I've got that. And I think I need to make it a little bit brighter. There we go. Cool. All right, so now looking at this, you can see you get all this nice texture to it. And, you know, now I need to start animating the camera, right? And this is one of those, did not mean to open Nuke. Hey guys, this is what Nuke looks like, if you didn't know. So, you know, what, this is where I need to really start framing things, and you know, it's actually, I find easier to do this kind of all at the same time. So I've got my camera, okay, and I'm gonna sort of start diving into the camera animation a little bit here. Let me rename this camera so it's not camera 1. And I generally, unless there's just one camera move happening, I generally don't put the keyframes right on the camera. And you'll start to see why, but what I do is I make a null object, and I'm going to call this cam01, right? Or actually maybe more appropriate is move01. And the general trick is you use the nulls to move the camera, and every time there's a different move, you make a new null, and that null does that move, okay? So let's figure out where we want the camera to start, okay? And so we'll put the camera in the start position. So I'm gonna select the camera, I'm gonna hit P, and I'm gonna move up. And of course, the footsteps need to be a 3D layer or none of this will work. There we go. All right, so we're gonna start kind of zoomed in like this. And there you go, all right? So we're gonna be sitting here and this footstep's gonna happen and the camera's gonna zip off and sort of follow the footsteps around. And maybe we'll be a little bit further away. Cool. So this first null, I need to make it a 3D layer and I'm gonna parent the camera to it. And then I'm gonna figure out, okay, here's where I kind of want it to start moving. So I'm gonna hit P on the null. I'm going to separate the dimensions, right? This is something I pretty much always do when I'm animating positions, so I can adjust those animation curves individually. And I'll just put keyframes on all of these for now. I'm also going to put a keyframe on Z rotation because I'm going to want to probably rotate that camera a little bit. And now I'm going to go forward to where that last, where the marker is for the last footprint, and I'm going to adjust the Z position of my null. And here's what's cool. If you parent a camera to a null and the null is visible, you can click and drag that null and actually use it to move the camera. And it's just kind of a neat little handy shortcut there. And one thing I'm already seeing is my texture is now not extending far enough. So I need to extend that with the reptile effect. Cool. There we go. And it needs to come down, and you can see the numbers are getting humongous already. So I probably need to make those numbers a little smaller. All right, I don't want them to get too big, and then actually scale the layer up a little bit. Okay, so I'm making the texture a little bit bigger overall, but since the camera just did a big zoom out move, that I think that's gonna be okay. Cool, and then I'm just gonna put easy ease on these, and let's just take a look at that, right? Let's just kind of see what's happening. Okay. So timing-wise, it's sort of doing what I want, but movement-wise, it doesn't feel very good at all. And so what I may want to do is actually have that null rotate at the same time so that we're sort of turning with the footsteps. And, you know, the next thing that happens is there's this line of dialogue, right? And so I kind of need to leave some room in the comp for that dialogue. And so if I sort of center the footsteps here, there's no room for the type. So why don't we land somewhere like here, right? And you can see now it's kind of neat how we kind of rotate over it. But we kind of need that camera to go in an arc around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my, let's see here. I want the camera to actually, in the middle of this move, kind of be up here. I want it to kind of arc around like that. And so now I can select all these and control click them and say keyframe interpolation. That's good. It's already Bezier. And I need to now, because it's defaulting to a easy ease keyframe. So what'll happen is it'll get there. Well, it's actually looking okay. But if you have an easy ease keyframe in between two other keyframes that are easy ease, it can sometimes add a little hitch in your animation. So I'm just going to go into my animation curves and just make sure that it's not doing that. And it actually looks pretty good right now. Let me just look at the X. You see how what I was worried it was going to do is this. And it didn't, which is awesome. So, and so now I've added like a nice arc to my camera move. But it ends really abruptly. So this is where you gotta get in there with the animation curves and just tweak them, make them do what you want. And so what I'm gonna do is grab this last keyframe here and I'm gonna pull it out a little ways. And I'm gonna go kind of one by one with my properties. And I can try to do them all at once. Let's see if this works. I'm gonna select all of the animated properties and I'm gonna grab all of the end keyframes and I'm gonna pull those Bezier handles out. And that's just gonna make that last ease in take longer. Cool. All right, now this feels a little bit different than the example animation, but I don't mind it. It's kind of interesting. And I might want to end a little bit more in this area, right? Yeah, maybe like that. It's kind of cool. Have it be kind of lower. Let's play that. Interesting. Cool. Now, one thing that I feel like we are starting to miss is that nice animation of the footstep, because it's going so fast. So what I might want to do is slow down the animation by pulling these keyframes out this way, right? And doing the same thing, like having that animation ease out a little bit longer. And when you adjust all the curves at the same time, you got to be careful, because sometimes, yep, you can get stuff like this, right? Where I've actually pulled this, this Bezier handle out, and it's going down below. What you don't want this Bezier handle to be below this keyframe, because now the values are doing things you don't want them to do. So that's why sometimes you have to go in and check each little property manually, but that looks good. There we go, that's better. All right, and there's a little weird hitch. Something's doing something funny animation-wise. So let me use my tilde key for a minute so I can really check these values and make sure we're not getting something. Let's see here. Yeah, these all look pretty good. So what's probably happening is you've got a value that's out of sync with another value. Like if the speed that the X position is changing is different than the Y position and different than the Z position, then you can start to get little hitches in your animation. Let's see if that adjustment made any difference. There's like a little bit of a wiggle to it, but I might not worry about that for now because I don't want to torture you guys. Cool, so that's our first camera move. And then once we land, I want that camera to slowly zoom out, okay? I kind of want to hang there. And this is when you're going to see the power of using nulls like this. So move 1, right, is this big arcing move, okay? I then want the camera to slowly zoom out. And I've animated 4 things on this null, and if I then want to smoothly transition into a slow pull out, that's going to be kind of tricky to do on this layer, but it's going to be easy to do is duplicate that null, and I'm going to use the left bracket key just to quickly. If I was good doing it with my mouse, I would do this, but I use the left bracket key. It just brings it forward. And actually, before I do that, what I'm going to do is hit U and remove all the keyframes from it. So now that second null is in exactly the same spot as the first null. It has no keyframes on it. And so what I'm going to do is parent the first move to the second move. And then the second move, I'm only going to animate Z position. And I'm going to just do a slight pull out. Let me move forward in time a little bit and do a slight pull out like that. Okay? And stretch those out. Now here's why this is awesome. It's awesome because let's see what it looks like first off. It's really interesting. I would love to. I want to know why this is happening. It's like this weird, it's right there. You can see it. You can actually see what's going on there. That's awful. Let's fix it. It's gotta be the Y position. I think that's what that is. I think that Y position is doing something really funky. Let's set that to auto Bezier. See if that fixes it. There we go. Much better. This auto Bezier button down here, it sort of attempts to smooth out a keyframe that's in between 2 other keyframes. And sometimes when you have little hitches like that, it can help sort of figure it out. Okay, but now look how that zoom sort of just happens, right? And it's not really that smooth of a transition yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set that first keyframe to easy ease on the second move, and I'm going to scoot it back a little bit. And I sort of like to keep these move nulls trimmed so I kind of know where the move begins and ends. There we go. And what's cool is, okay, I want that zoom to start a few frames earlier. I can literally just grab this null and move it over a little bit. And what's happening is this move is now overlapping with this move, and you're sort of blending between them. Right? So you've got this complex moving, rotating camera, and then you've got a slight zoom out happening, and because they're on separate nulls, it's so easy to control. If I need to make the zoom quicker, I can just go like this, right? I just move that keyframe, and then the next move is just going to be on another null that's over here, right? And we're basically just going to stagger all of the moves, and when they're on nulls, you can move them just by sliding the null. It makes it so much easier. So that's a really good little trick. All right, so now we've built up an environment, we've built our first animated piece, and we have the camera animated, and we've actually got a couple of moves happening, and we're off to a great start. So why don't we stop here, and in the next segment of this, in the next video, we're actually gonna start animating the type, and I'm gonna show you guys some type tricks. So thank you guys so much for watching this, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you so much for watching. We will continue this in part 2, and then in part 3, we will finish up the animation. I hope you learned a lot from this lesson on how to start a more complicated After Effects project like this Kinetic Type piece. Don't forget to sign up for a free student account to access the project files from the lesson you just watched. Thank you so much, and I will see you next time.